I'm Rebecca. I'm the Psych Coach, and today I'm going to be giving you tips on what to do if you feel invisible in life. What do you do if your voice isn't heard as much as you would like it to be? What do you do if you feel like people don't pay attention to you? If you feel like your point doesn't matter? It can be really difficult living feeling invisible, but there are things you can do to improve that and to make sure that your voice is heard, your opinion is counted, and ultimately that you feel better about yourself. So listen up to 5 strategies I'm going to give you to practice to make sure your voice is heard. Tip number 1 is to be aware of where the invisibility comes from. Perhaps you were brought up in a household where your voice wasn't heard, where you had to hide away. Perhaps there were more dominant characters in the household for various reasons, and you always just had to be the quiet, good, well-behaved one. Perhaps you learned at a young age to walk on eggshells and to not rear your head too far in case you were talked down to or in case you were told off. Or perhaps relationships as you've got older have informed that belief of you being invisible and you not being worth asserting your opinion for. Whatever has caused it, it is really useful to know where it's come from. But once you've worked out where it's come from, to tell yourself that that doesn't apply now. If you were brought up in a household where your voice had to be really quiet because you didn't want to rock the boat, you didn't want to get told off, that's not applicable now. You're not in that household anymore. You're not that child. Perhaps you've been in unhealthy relationships where you've had to keep really quiet, where you've been told that your opinion isn't to be heard. But that's not where you are now. So find the origins and then tell yourself that you're not living that history now. Situations are different. You can speak up, and giving yourself permission in situations to respond differently to the younger you can be hugely beneficial. Tip number 2 is to practice speaking up. If you've been conditioned in such a way that you know that your voice doesn't matter, your voice shouldn't be heard, that's going to be a deeply embedded thought process in your head. So what you need to do is to counteract that and do the complete opposite of what you're programmed to do. That means keeping a record every day of times where you've spoken up. Maybe that means taking something back to a shop, speaking up in a cafe or restaurant if you're not happy about something, telling a friend something that you found difficult, and keep a journal. Keep a journal of all the moments you've spoken up, because the more times you speak up, the more you're chipping away at the unhealthy thought process that history has created by earlier experiences. Keep a record of the progress you're making. It's really motivating to keep a record and to keep you on track for making sure that each day you encounter at least one situation where you make your voice heard. Tip number 3, if you feel invisible, is to do things to get noticed. Whoa, how controversial. If you spent your whole life, being invisible, why on earth would you want to do things that draw attention to yourself? But actually, you can stop being invisible. You can give yourself permission to be noticed. That could mean smiling at someone in the street, saying good morning to someone when you're on your commute. It could mean striking up a conversation with a stranger in the park or someone in a shop. When you do things to get noticed, it doesn't mean you need to be super extravagant, but it means you're doing things that say, hey, I want to communicate with you. I want to have a worthwhile interaction with you, even if it's just a smile, even if it's a brief hello. All of that stops you from being so invisible, and you have to take some responsibility for raising your profile. Start practicing little things to make yourself noticed. Then you can step on to bigger things like putting your hand up in a work meeting, saying a slightly more out there statement to your friends if you're out for dinner with them. Whatever it is, do things to start getting noticed. Tip number 4 is to take risks socially. If you believe you're invisible, and if you spent a lot of your life hiding away, it's highly likely that you're not going to want to do things like invite people to your house or where you live in case they say no. It's highly likely that you might not want to do things like celebrate your birthday in case of a rejection. It's highly likely that you might not suggest social engagements in case people say no. So take some risks. Tolerate the idea of people saying no. for the prospect of potentially people saying yes. If people say no, you can move on to something else. But take risks, because taking risks and putting yourself out there speaks up for yourself. It says, hey, I'm here to be noticed. I want to spend time with you. Spend time with me. It means you're undoing the unhealthy pathways of invisibility by taking risks socially. And tip number 5 is to remind yourself each day that you are absolutely worth speaking up for. Shed the invisibility cloak. Shed all the comforts that you keep to keep yourself safe, whether that's not going out, whether that's covering yourself up physically, whether that's not raising your head above the surface socially. Whatever it is, stop doing that and tell yourself, I am absolutely worth speaking up for. I am absolutely worth stopping being invisible. My voice needs to be heard. Doing that is so empowering, it's so liberating. And by reminding yourself each day that that is your focus, you're reinforcing the previous 4 steps that I've told you to do. Again, everything takes practice. This isn't going to happen overnight. But if you could put those 5 things into practice, you will start being more at the forefront of your life instead of trying to hide away in the background of everything. If you've enjoyed today's tips, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'll give you plenty more tips on how to use psychology on a day-to-day basis.